No one knew her first name. Even on church records, she was simply listed as La Veuve de Lorne, the widow of Lorne. She appeared in the village sometime after the war, silent and thin, always dressed in mourning black with thee, and at night, villagers swore they heard footsteps barefoot, slow, dragging, moving along the edge of the woods, a tale of a woman who was cursed not to die until she had balanced the steps of grief. She said it was a sin to bury a man with both shoes, that when you do, he walks too far in the afterlife. On the fourth day, a hunter named Etienne found the widow's door half open, the chimney cold, the trees around her house perfectly still, and his shadow returns, looking to unpair someone else, always just out of sight, always left of where you looked, just turned to the fire and whispered, "She's not collecting shoes, she's keeping us alive." For the first time in the village's written memory, no deaths, no shoes lost, no sign of the widow, kind of veil that looked like it had been lifted since death first brushed it. Her cottage stood on the edge of the woods, the path leading to it barely visible unless you'd walked it a dozen times. But there were two things everyone in Saint remembered. First, she never spoke more than 7 words to anyone. Second, every time someone in the village died, their left shoe went missing. Never both, never stolen, just the left, taken sometime between the burial and the first frost that followed. At first, no one cared. Then they whispered. Then they feared. But no one accused her. You didn't accuse someone who never asked for anything, someone who prayed silently in the back row, someone who seemed to age backwards. Her back straightened, her gait lightened, as the village grew heavier with burials. Father Renard said it was old grief, twisted like ivy around her soul. He believed that some widows collect lace or books or scraps of letters. He said she collected what she had lost, a partner's missing half. But when they asked him who her husband was, Father Renard paused, then frowned. Remember ever meeting him? She had lived in the village for 13 winters, 13 burials, when young Louis Belaya drowned in the stream behind the orchard. That was the first time. The second time was worse. The second time, she sent a letter. His foot caught in ice. They said, a simple accident. His mother sobbed as the men dragged his body to the chapel. But when she went to dress him for burial, she found both shoes gone, not just the left. 13 missing left shoes. No one could explain why the right shoe was always left behind, sitting neatly by the hearth, or beside a still bed, or buried alone in a coffin with a faint smell of pine, until the 14th winter. The widow didn't come to the funeral. Father Renard read it aloud during Mass. It had only 6 words, written in looping grey ink. One left too soon. The debt bleeds. After that, things changed. The frost came early that year. Birds stopped nesting in the eaves. Old Jean, the midwife, said she remembered a story from her grandmother's time. They asked her if it was just a tale. Jean said nothing. That winter, no one died. Then spring came, and with it, the thaw. The stream ran dark for 3 days. He went inside. What he found made him forget how to pray. Etienne was not a man given to fear. He had hunted boar and fog that swallows light, had seen wolves blink in silence where others swore they saw ghosts. But when he stepped inside the widow's cottage, something inside him folded. Etienne reached for it, then stopped. The thread pulsed, like it breathed. He tried the doorknob anyway. It didn't turn, not from rust, from resistance, like it was being held, gently but firmly, from the other side. Not fear, like muscle that remembers a wound before the mind does. The room was silent, but not empty. Dustless, not a speck, except for every 13th line, which was angled left, a ledger of some kind, a count, as if the house had been exhaling endlessly. The hearth was cold, the candles unburned, but every wick was wet with wax, dripping upward. On the wall opposite the hearth hung a single shelf, and upon it left shoes, 46 of them, none matched, all meticulously arranged, toe inward. Etienne counted them twice. The number frightened him more than the shoes themselves, because there had only been 45 funerals. The 46th hadn't happened yet. Beyond the main room was a door, thread-bound across the handle with red wool. Not a bird, not a goat, not a man. And then, on the 14th frost, it happened. Jean, the midwife, died in her sleep, peaceful, smiling. But when her daughter went to dress her for burial, instead, he searched the kitchen. Nothing rotting, no food, but carved into the wooden countertop were lines dozens, hundreds scored with the blade or nail, all vertical. Etienne turned to leave, then froze. The air shifted. Not wind, not sound, just a memory pressed into the walls like damp, and a smell, cypress, like fresh coffins. He looked up. Just the left side of a human body, preserved perfectly, resting in a glass box filled with fine white ash. No head, no torso, just half a jaw, half a ribcage, one lung, a left hand, curled inward, gripping a matching left shoe. Above the entryway was a beam, carved with letters in an old script. He could barely make them out. Si qui est price, doit rester de. What is taken must remain unpaired. The widow owned only one, small, above the basin. But it didn't reflect the room. It reflected a hallway that wasn't there, a narrow corridor, dimly lit, filled with doors, all closed. Etienne leaned in closer. The mirror and on the glass, in perfect handwriting, something was etched from inside. That was when he noticed the mirror. Do not bury the 46th. He ran. No one blamed him. But the story spread, and for the first time in 13 years, the widow didn't come back. Spring passed into summer, then fall. Still no death. Both shoes were gone. This time, they searched the cottage together. Etienne led them. The red thread had snapped. The door opened. What they found was not a room. It was a chamber of limbs, not corpses. No blood, no rot. And beside the box, a parchment, written in 3 hands, one neat, one frantic, one that trailed off like a dying heart. To keep the balance, I split. To keep the living, I walk half. If one dies, unclaimed, the left returns, and the right shall follow. Outside, a wind rose. Leaves spun clockwise, and someone, no one remembered who, whispered, "The pair has been made." And that was when the shoes on the shelf began to turn themselves. The shoes did not fall. They turned, one by one, heel over toe, until every left shoe faced outward toward the door. The house was locked. They nailed the door, salted the walls. The priest said prayers that belonged to another century. But the next morning, all the shoes had reappeared, each placed in front of the doorsteps of their respective families. Dogs only walked in circles to the left. Horses refused to trot with the right leg. Babies cried if turned on their right side. And those who dared to wear their own right shoe began to limp until the shoe cracked, or caught fire, or bled. Not both shoes, just the left, again, but now warm to the touch, and dusty, covered in the same white ash as the glass box. Not a gust of wind, not vibration, just decision. Etienne tried to speak, but found his tongue thick, as if the air had forgotten to carry sound. And the other two reached the next village only to find no one recognized them, sacrificed half her own being, spiritually and physically, to hold back something worse. A return. The message etched inside glass. Do not bury the 46th. They hadn't, but they had released it. A reunion not meant to happen. A symmetry that would bring collapse, not peace. The imbalance had kept the village safe. The 46th shoe completed the symmetry. People turned to each other and could no longer recall names, faces, even why they were gathered. No one answered, and by morning, the right shoes were gone too. Father Renard wept. Balance has memory, and it's collecting what we forgot to grieve. No one remembered Saint. It was not on the maps. Someone stepped forward. Margot, the apothecary's daughter, came footprints, not of someone walking, but dragging, one side of the gate heavier than the other. First left, then right, then together. She reached for the glass box, perhaps to close the lid. But the ash inside breathed, not rose, not stirred, breathed. And the left hand, severed at the wrist, twitched. That night, no one slept. The shoes were sealed back inside. That day, 4 villagers left the village. One disappeared in the forest. One was found mute by the stream. Then the animals began to act strange. A council was called. What was left of the village gathered in the church. The old bell, untouched for years, rang once on its own. Inside, Father Renard showed them a journal torn ink-smeared found behind the widow's bed. It told of a pact made 13 years ago, a grief too deep for prayer, a body too torn to bury whole. The widow's husband had died in the war, but his body returned incomplete, missing every piece on the left side. So she made a vow: if death takes the left, I will keep balance by collecting it from others piece by piece, until he is whole, or I am not. She had used herself. The ledger lines, the mirror hallway. At sundown, the bells rang again, but no one pulled the rope. The air grew dense, low to the ground, and from the path to the woods, Etienne looked around. Half the village was missing. Not dead, just mis. That night, someone knocked on every door. Not once, but twice, always twice. It was the child who remembered the lullaby. 5 years old, could not read or tie her shoes, but one morning, as the fog curled like breath through the village square, she stood in front of the chapel steps and sang, "When he walks again with both his feet, there'll be no path, there'll be no street, just names unthreaded, one by one. The pair returns, the pact is done," had turned the exact color of the widow's veil. No one had taught her the song. No one remembered hearing it before, but her voice cracked with age not her own, and her eyes. He believed the widow had never died, never vanished, only separated herself, part into the shoes, part into the house, part into him, her husband. The man returned in halves. That day, Father Renard called it, "She's not gone, she's divided." But now that the 46th shoe was in place, now that both sides had been matched, she had made him whole. Or the names of their grandparents. One woman looked in a mirror and screamed, because her hair was braided in a style she swore no one had ever taught her yet, and in doing so, unmade herself. That night, vanished, but her bed was still warm. Her left shoe remained on the pillow. Her right shoe was found in the church confessional, nailed to the ceiling, dripping something thick and translucent, not blood, not wax, but something in between. Etienne and the others gathered what they could: salt, iron, mirrors, but everything reflected only their left side. No one could recall their middle names or birthdays. And then came the knock. Not on the door, on the window, still, wearing mismatched shoes, one black, one brown, one clearly new, the other old and cracked. His face was blurred, not by fog, but by movement, like a flame behind oiled glass. One for each shoe. The salt melted, the iron curled, mirrors turned to smoke. Twice Etienne opened it, slowly, and saw a man standing at the edge of the courtyard. Tall, he spoke. The man she had tried to rebuild, one piece at a time, by stealing imbalance from every funeral. But his voice came from behind Etienne. She thought grief could divide me, but it only doubled. At that, the glass in every window cracked, and in the chapel, the final bell rang. No rope, no hand, just resonance pure, low, and final. Reappeared in the town square, naked eyes shut, her lips moving, silently mouthing names, 46 names, and then, one final name, whispered, clear amid the widow's husband, the man who had died on the battlefield, split by cannon fire, the man who was returned, incomplete. But balance does not ask permission, it only waits. And when it is fulfilled, someone pays in full. Would not open her eyes, but her lips kept moving, whispering names that no one wanted to hear, because with each one, a person in the village vanished, not died, not fled, just unremembered, like letters peeled from old wood, a chair missing a leg that no one noticed until it fell. Their homes remained, their tools, their shadows, but no one could say who they'd belonged to. Etienne kept count, 46 names, 46 vanishings, and then silence, collapsed, her mouth still, her hands cold, but alive. The man was gone. In the chapel, the confessional door creaked open. Inside, not a priest's bench, not wood or curtain or cushion, but a stone basin filled with water so black it refused reflection. At the bottom, the villagers found 2 shoes left and right neatly placed toe to toe. On the basin's edge, something was carved. To bury what is repaired is to make the world uneven again. She had done all she could to keep the imbalance intact, to delay the return of a man who died wrong, to stretch grief into fragments, so the whole would never reform. They debated, burn the shoes, bury them in salt, lock the house and flee. But Etienne said no. The well was dry, but people were there, laughing, remembering, alone. He found the path, though he didn't remember ever walking it. The trees leaned left, the moss clung to one side, and at the end, a clearing where nothing grew, where sound vanished, where the world tilted inward. He remembered the widow's ledger, the red thread, the breathing ash, the hush of a house that held its breath for 13 years. But now the pieces had aligned, and the village was whole. Took one the left hand, threw it into the trees. Let the world remain just slightly off, just enough. Too whole. Etienne carried the shoes to the woods. He dug. One hole, deep, unmarked. He placed the shoes together, then paused. Then he buried the right. When he returned, the village had changed, slightly. The bell tower was crooked, was playing with stones, humming. When Etienne passed by, she looked up. She says, "Thank you," Etienne asked. The widow nodded. "She's not in pieces anymore, just elsewhere." Then she offered him a stone, smooth, white, etched with a single word, Desaccord unpaired. He put it in his pocket, and from that day on, no one in Saint ever buried the dead with both shoes again. Because some ghosts don't want to haunt. They just want to stay broken enough to rest.